and I know you're in Lagos attending to personal and professional engagements, but it's been a little over a year since you finished your tenure. Some would say quite a successful one at the Central Bank of Kenya, one of Africa's largest economies. What have you been up to since that? You're obviously in Lagos here, doing a lot, but tell us a bit about what your post-CBK life has been like.
Well, thank you very much again. I retired away from the Central Bank of Kenya in June of 2023, so a little over a year ago. And the first thing I needed to do is to rest.
Okay.
Yeah, I was completely burnt out. And also to focus on family, focus on friends, etc. Then, of course, I've been looking at things that I haven't done in the past. I'd always wanted to do, not so much a bucket list, but, there are things that I have interesting questions that I've been looking at, etc. Been doing a bit of travel. For instance, the first time had never been to Nigeria before.
Okay.
And so, but I was here in July of this year, and this is my second time. So maybe I'm making it a habit, and I'm learning a lot from the trips. Also spending time with people that maybe I wouldn't have spent time with. And one of the things that, as you know, when I was in July, I went out and hung out, as it were, with some of the musicians, Rude Boy. And, and this time around, I also hung out with Dibanj. And it was interesting. These are people that I wouldn't generally, artists, I wouldn't really work with. And each time, Rude Boy dropped an album.
Yes.
Oh, actually, it's a track, Vitamin D. And this time around, Dibanj also dropped an album. So maybe I need to come more frequently,
Clearly.
and then there'll be much more creativity.
Indeed, indeed. Africa's creative talents are so amazing. And it's quite a contrast from what you used to do at the Central Bank of Kenya.
Absolutely.
And talking about the Central Bank of Kenya, African central banks play quite an important role in the economy, the financial services sector as a whole. How do you see their role in terms of ensuring financial stability in a climate like this, and especially protecting the main stakeholders, consumers and depositors?
So central banks are extremely important, both in the narrow sense of the financial sector and in the wider sense in the economy. And if they stumble, the economy will stumble.
Absolutely.
So one of the things they generally should do is to work to reduce or maintain price stability, inflation. And their success in the first instance has to be measured against the inflation control that they actually maintain. So this is a time in the global sort of sphere where there's a lot more shocks coming in, including price shocks.
Of course.
And so the central banks have to deal with those things. The price of oil also fluctuates quite a bit. So I think that is the first mandate of central banks which they need to look at. Then the second thing is financial stability. And they conduct that in the context of, let's say, regulating some of the major financial institutions, that is commercial banks in particular, and a few other specialized institutions. And they're ensuring that those institutions are strong and are not creating unnecessary risks. And those risks are managed. That is really the business of regulation. And I think the point is that there'll be shocks going forward. And if we cannot depend on the financial institutions, strong financial institutions, I think we've lost our way as well. And we'll never become a strong economy. And now I'm talking not just the country, Nigeria or Kenya, but actually Africa in general, if indeed the financial sector is stumbling. So the central banks do have a very important role.
And the job of a governor of a central bank in Africa is a tall order. It's not a walk in the park, and you're often taking very tough decisions that involve balancing certain interventions. During your tenure at CBK, you had to take some tough decisions around specific banks. How did that shape your thinking about leadership in difficult situations when you're facing a dilemma? Perhaps it wasn't a dilemma for you. You clearly knew what to do. But there were a few banks. I heard about Chase, Imperial, Dubai Bank. Yeah. How did that shape your thinking?
Yeah, there are 3 banks that we shut down very quickly very soon after I became governor, a few months after. But I think I want to begin by saying that, yes, the task of a governor and indeed the central bank more generally is a tough one. It's a difficult one. And I think, unfortunately, everyone else has an opinion about what should have happened.
Sure.
So, and you have to shut down all that and focus on the technical answer and what is best for the economy and deal with that. So I think the first thing is clarity about what needs to be done in terms of what are the risks. And in this case, one can determine, we determined that the risks were excessive. And that's because of their poor business practices, maybe the sort of weak balance sheet. So in that sense, it became clear that they could in effect infect the rest of the financial sector. Now, shutting them down is not just turning off a switch. Yeah?
Indeed.
There are depositors that will be affected. And you could say they are the innocent bystanders. And in some sense, that has always been a big concern of any regulator. And that's why at times it's easier to have some forbearance. You sort of say, well, let's give them a pass and all that. But like everything else, forbearance will end up becoming the problem. For instance, if I don't go to the gym today, if I don't exercise today, nothing really happens.
Indeed.
But after I've not gone to the gym or exercised in a week, I'll really notice it.
Yes.
A month, there'll be problems. So I think that's really it. So clarity about what to do is key. Then the other thing is importance of ensuring that the regulation is up to snuff, is according to best practices. So you're not regulating randomly, quote unquote. You're using best practices, and also you're regulating techniques, etc. Your supervision techniques, etc., are up to world standards. So in effect, this whole experience centers on this sort of improvement trajectory.
Absolutely.
And I think we've come out better. Now, having said that, it is important to appreciate that there are three jurisdictions that are essential for the rest of Africa to have good regulation and strong banks. And that is because those three jurisdictions have Pan-African banks. So that is Nigeria, South Africa, and Kenya. So it is important to also see that there is a certain responsibility for other jurisdictions and people much wider, so not only in your own jurisdiction.